Hi everyone, welcome to Wildlife Wednesdays. So this week I wanted to do a little video about next week's Endangered Species Day. So whilst we don't have any endangered species here at Feathers and Fur, we do have a lot that are at risk because unfortunately a lot of our birds of prey are at risk. So we're going to introduce you to a couple of birds today, but I'm going to start with my boy Gimli. Gim! Comes. Woo! Good boy. Oh, hi, you missed it. So I wanted to talk about snowy owls because unfortunately they are really struggling at the moment. We've got to the point where it's kind of impossible to work with a bird like Gimli and not talk about climate change. So snowy owls cover quite a vast range, and actually here in Europe they're still considered least concern because they're thought to be quite stable in their population. But in North America, the Canadian Arctic and places like that, they've actually been moved to vulnerable now. So it's thought that about 64% of the snowy owl population was lost between 1970 and 2014, which is a huge population loss. And the IUCN, which are the group basically that decide the conservation status of animals all over the world, have been quoted as saying that if the loss is actually even greater than we think, then they will consider moving them into the endangered category. So this is a bird that we do see here in the UK, which could find itself on the endangered species list if we don't do something to help them. So there are lots of threats for the snowy owls. Partly, give me another bitch again. Good boy. So we've got, part of it is historical things, so they do get eaten locally. Not necessarily a massive issue, but if they become endangered, it will be. The pet trade is a big one, so they do get captured and traded as pets. And there was a stage where they were killed for their eyeballs, basically their eyeballs as aphrodisiacs, which is crazy. Their biggest threats at the moment are habitat loss because of just going off for a toddle, because of human encroachment. So mostly housing or for transport, so roads and train lines and things like that. And then the biggest, most imminent threat to them is climate change. So up in the Arctic, they feel the climate change a lot quicker than we do here. And what it's doing is basically having a big effect on their favourite food source, the lemmings. Now lemmings, they need grass to eat and to nest in. As the Arctic warms, it rains rather than snows. And as that rain falls and hits the nice cold ground, it freezes as layers of ice. Now ice unfortunately means that the lemmings can't get the grass that they need to eat, so the lemming population dips, which means the snowy owl population dips. And you can even see it here in the UK, as we hardly ever get snowy owls visiting us compared to the amount we did, because it just doesn't get cold enough for them to feel the need to move here anymore. Sorry, I had to move in from the rain and the thunder that was just coming, but I've still got Gimli. But yes. Not a YouTuber, there's no seamless editing here. So Gimli, you come again? Good boy. Gimli is obviously a fan favourite with many people. So I just wanted to tell you about their issues basically, and just describe a little bit about Gimli and how awesome he is in terms of an Arctic species, because if he does do a little waddle for you, you'll see he's got these lovely big snowshoes. Now those big snowshoes help him to walk around on the snow, and they help protect his feet so he doesn't get frostbite. He's also got he's also got the loveliest whiskers as well to keep his beak nice and warm and to stop that from getting frostbite. So he's very well insulated, very well camouflaged for an Arctic condition. And snowy owls, because they live in such a harsh environment, do a lot of things that other owls don't, such as scavenge. Most owls do not eat things that are already dead, but snowy owls know they have to take advantage of whatever they've got to be able to survive in such harsh environments. So they are amazing. They're amazingly well adapted, but the world is just changing a little bit too fast for them at the moment. So I'm now going to go and get Ash, our lovely little tawny owl, so I can tell you a little bit about them and why they need our help here in the UK. And here he is, our beautiful tawny owl, Ash. Look how sweet he is. So the tawny owls are amber listed in the UK, so the RSPB have like a traffic light system. So they're either green, amber or red. Red listed species are ones that are obviously in the worst amount of danger. Amber listed species usually means there's been quite a moderate or rapid decline in their population or their distribution, which is these guys. And then you get green listed, so the birds that are stable and that we don't need to worry about quite as much. Now with the tawny owls, if he turns around and has a look at you, the reason I wanted to highlight these is because these are actually our most, well, as far as we are aware, our most numerous and most common owl here in the UK. Well, apart from Ireland, they haven't got any over in Ireland. But they are very, very much a familiar owl. So they might be the ones that we have the most of, but you're very unlikely to actually see one because they're the most typical owl in the world. They're the owl that you learn about at school, the owl in the Gruffalo, Beatrix Potter, Winnie the Pooh. They are all tawny owls because he is a woodland owl. You can tell by his camouflage and looking up in all the trees. He is designed to blend into the woodland. He's also designed to fly in the woodland and hunt in woodland because he's got a nice broad set of wings but a long tail, so he can twist and turn nicely. So he lives in the woods. Stereotype number one. Stereotype number two, he's very nocturnal. So no owls will ever fit into the really nice handy category that we put them in. So tawny owls will hoot in the middle of the afternoon to establish their territory. If their babies are hungry, they will hunt regardless. But this guy with his huge, great, big eyes has some of the best nocturnal vision out there. So Ash sees the world like a really high definition night vision camera. So he can see the mice in the woods in the middle of the night. So he lives in the woods, he comes out at night, and you never flap? No, change your mind, okay. And they are the only, no, you can't sit on my shoulder, dude. And they're the only owl species on the planet that actually says twit-twoo. So that first noise you learn when you're a kid, owls say twit-twoo, just this guy. So even though we've got lots of them, you probably haven't seen them, or if you have seen them, that's really lucky, but loads of people don't. Purely because you'd kind of have to be hanging out in the woods in the middle of the night to have a good chance of spotting one. But hopefully loads of you have heard them. Any kind of soft hooty noise that you hear in the wild in the UK is always this guy. The other ones that we have in the UK don't really make much of a hooty noise at all. So tawny owls, not doing brilliantly well, even though I don't want anyone to kind of presume they're doing amazing just because they're our most common owl. They are struggling. They're struggling because the rodents that they eat are poisoned. They're struggling because there aren't many insects around. This is not a fussy owl. If he can't find a mouse, he'll eat a slug or a frog or a worm. So we need to garden a bit more wildlife friendly, get some ponds out there. We need to be a bit nicer to our insects, let all the grass grow. Oh, that was a dramatic one. Do my hair for me, thank you. Get those insects in so that he's got something to eat. And we need to try and keep up as many trees as we can. You know, he camouflages in a tree. He wants to nest in a tree, so he needs those nest sites and those roost sites to keep himself protected. So that's Ash, our gorgeous tawny owl. I'm going to get one last person to come say hi to you guys. Last but not least, I've got our little man Bourneville to help me tell you all about kestrels. Now Bourneville's a little bit famous now. If you follow us on social media, you probably would have seen his little escapades where he got a bit lost recently and ended up in Maidenhead. Crazy little adventures, but he's doing really, really well now. He's really good. He obviously had a scrap with something because he was missing half his tail, but look how well it's grown back. These beautiful new tail feathers in the middle. He's looking gorgeous. Sorry, he is eating his lunch at the moment, but Bourneville takes his time. He likes tiny little nibbles. Hopefully he'll start eating soon. But I wanted to tell you about kestrels because they're an amber listed species. So the RSPB have given them amber status because they are in decline. We're not 100% sure what the recent decline is for. So since about 2005, the kestrel numbers have dropped massively. And no one's been able to put a definitive answer onto what exactly is causing that decline. But just like a lot of our British birds of prey, they have faced lots of difficulties along the way. So persecution is one of them. Raptor persecution is a real big problem here in the UK. Also things like pesticides, so like DDT, have had a massive impact on them in around the 1950s and 60s. Yes, and so although there isn't a definitive answer as of yet, here at Feathers and Fur, our kind of overall guess at what's happening from what we've seen in the wild is probably a combination of things. So kestrels are mostly small mammal hunters, but they also love insects. So DDT and all the pesticides had such a big impact on them. Barn owls as well have really been struggling up until recently. They're doing fairly well now, but they were struggling because they couldn't get those mammals, and that's because both the barn owl and the kestrel are farmland birds. They need rough grassland, they need hedgerows, and all of that really lovely rich farmland habitat we used to have, we just don't have much of anymore. So I think part of it is probably because they're lacking nest sites. They love to nest in holes in trees, so they want big old oak trees. We don't have many of those anymore. We also have lost a lot of insects. I don't think it's just a coincidence that our insect numbers have dropped massively, and so have lots of predators that rely really heavily on them, such as hedgehogs, kestrels, tawny owls, all tend to struggle when we lose our insects. So I think that's probably quite a big factor as to their decline. But I just wanted to pinpoint exactly why we should be so upset about losing these guys. And I think it's the same with any animal. They're a huge part of the ecosystem, but this is the one that hovers on the side of the road. And this is a decline that I've noticed in my lifetime. So I'm only 28, and I have already noticed that when I was little and we'd go on drives, you would see these guys hovering kind of on the side of the motorways, over fields, things like that. I could drive for 2 hours plus and not see a single one of these guys anymore. We're lucky where we are now. In Moss End in Bracknell, we've got lots of wild kestrels, really beautiful to watch. But on my journeys, I hardly see any kestrels anymore. And that is something that's really, really noticeable. So finally started eating. So yeah, I just wanted to show you how beautiful they are. They are struggling, so if you see kestrels, you're really lucky. That's brilliant. Let us know if you've got local kestrels or anything like that. And hopefully we'll start seeing an increase now. If we start looking after our insects, hopefully that should see a little bit of an increase in these guys. So on a slightly depressing note, unfortunately the bird of prey persecution, as I said, is a big problem. Just before I disappear off, a lot of people who aren't sort of bird of prey enthusiasts probably don't know a lot about our harriers. Now, harriers are an awesome group of birds of prey. Now, the hen harrier in particular is one of the most persecuted birds of prey in the UK. They are being shot and poisoned left, right and centre, and it's having a really big impact on them and their ecosystem as well. Now, if you wanted to learn a bit more about that, they are a red listed species here in the UK, but obviously I do not have a hen harrier here to show you, but I wanted to mention them. And if you wanted to learn any more about their plight in the UK and raptor persecution and what we can do for our hen harriers, then I have actually written a blog over on our website, which I will put the link to that in the description box below. So otherwise, thank you for listening. Go out and learn a little bit about an endangered species, or just a species in the UK that's not doing too well, for next week's Endangered Species Day. And do a little bit of digging, see if there's anything you can do to help some of them in your local area. Maybe you use slug pellets or things like that in your garden. Maybe you could pledge to stop. So bye from Bourneville, who's tucking into his dinner nicely. Sorry if you're squeamish. Little Nibbles, he's such a gentleman. And thank you so much for all your support, and thank you for listening.